So here's the video that I'm going to do today that I mentioned yesterday. It lays out how the global oligarchs, the club, the elite, go from country to country, take their assets, leave the people with nothing but debt, and move on. Rinse and repeat. And for anyone that says or doesn't understand why, how the bankers did this, caused the problem in 2008, everything else, they don't understand it, or they think you're some kind of bozo because they can't see what you see, this is what you share with them. And this is from Global Research Canada website, Canadian website. Greece, the one biggest lie you are being told by the media. Well, first, gotta give a little shout out to Luis. I met Luis. His daughter's the one that sang for me on the JP Morgan parody I did, Just Give Me a Reason, Pink song. And he's like, man, I'm gonna be in Orlando. He mentioned this a couple years ago, but we couldn't meet up. And then this year he says, man, I'm gonna be in Sunday through Saturday. Do you think you can maybe meet up with me, I'll have a drink or something? I'm like thinking, well, it's Monday through Friday, I gotta work. He's gonna come on Sunday. So I started looking online. I'm like, maybe I'll take my kids to the Nickelodeon hotel. And so I did. I looked that up. I was like, yeah, I'll just take a Monday off, so I'll come Sunday and Monday. I'll meet up with them Sunday and whatever. So little did I know, he had already booked a Nickelodeon hotel room for his family and his kids. So I was like, all right, yeah, I'll meet you. And then he went on to tell me, okay, I'm gonna book with Nickelodeon. I was like, oh my God, I was just looking that up without even knowing, so it was crazy. So we were both at the same hotel to meet up. We didn't even know it until we confirmed. But he he came down, and for me, and probably for anybody that, most people, when they see your videos, they're like, oh, they feel like they know you. I've been watching you for so long. But I don't feel the same way, because I don't know who anybody is. I'm the one doing the videos. I'm not watching other people's or my subscribers' videos, really, So, you don't know what to expect. How's this going to go? Is this going to be uncomfortable? But it was actually great. It was really good. And, kicked it off, hit it off pretty good. And, I wish we had more time to actually hang out and, chat some more, whatever. But I had to give a little shout out because it was good. Met his daughter, the one that sang for me. It's real good. It was nice. Kids met the kids. Our kids were playing with their kids. Even though his daughter's a little older than mine, but his son was, my kid's age, so it worked out real well. And they played some stuff together inside Nickelodeon, so it was cool. So it says, by truth and satire, every single mainstream media has the following narrative for the economic crisis in Greece. The government spent too much money and went broke. The generous banks gave them more money, but Greece didn't pay the bills because it mismanaged the money that was given. It sounds quite reasonable, right? Except that it's a big, fat lie. And by the way, I know this is about Greece, but you can take it to any country because they all have bonds and they all set them up to fail. And bonds pay interest. Bankers love interest, and the bankers own the rating agencies, who then tell them, make this country's bonds interest rates go up a little bit. Hook your boy up. Yep. Rinse and repeat. So except it's a big fat lie, not only about Greece, but about other European countries such as Spain, Portugal, Italy, and Ireland, who are all experiencing various degrees of austerity, which is cutting back, you're losing some of your pensions, we gotta tighten our belt, gotta pay this debt off. That's what they're talking about, austerity. It was also the same big fat lie that was used by banks and corporations to exploit many Latin American, Asian, and African countries for many decades. See, this is nothing new. Now we're going to take it to the Western world. Because why? These elitists don't have some place that they hang their hat. Oh, I'm an American, so I can't do it to America. Or I'm part of the EU. You know, I live over here in one of these countries, or I have multiple houses in multiple EU countries, so I can't do it to those people. Oh no, these people do not have any kind of, you know, like, this is my country, so I'm not going to do it. Their thought process is, how can I get global and do this globally? That's how they think. Greece did not fail on its own. It was made to fail. And while it was failing, I was doing videos telling you they're going to privatize Greece, they're going to sell off Greece's assets, so that when the day comes and Greece finally has to file for basically worldwide bankruptcy, they're going to look back and say, not only were we going to do this anyways, because here's the damn result, but we lost our electric company, we lost our multiple services throughout the city because they were sold off to private hands who are now demanding that a rate increases occur, and we can't afford those. If it was at least our government, we could do something about it, but we don't own it anymore. So I was doing videos waking people up about that. Wonder how many people in Greece saw my video. So, in summary, the banks wrecked the Greek government and then deliberately pushed it into unsustainable debt, while revenue-generating public assets, privatization, were sold off to oligarchs and international corporations. The rest of the article is about how and why. If you are a fan of mafia movies, you know how the mafia would take over a popular restaurant. First, they would do something to disrupt the business, so, you know, stage a murder at the restaurant or start a fire. When the business starts to suffer, the Godfather would generously offer some money as a token of friendship. In return, Greasy Thumb takes over the restaurant's accounting, Big Joey is put in charge of procurement, and so on. Needless to say, it's a journey down a spiral of misery for the owner, who will soon be broke and, if lucky, still alive. Now let's map the mafia story to international finance in 4 stages. Stage 1. The first and foremost reason that Greece got into trouble was the great financial crisis of 2008. That was the brainchild of Wall Street and international bankers. If you remember, bankers came up with an awesome idea of giving subprime mortgages. Even had laws changed, regulations removed, by the way. So they thought it would be a good idea to give subprime mortgages to anyone who can fog a mirror. Which is, everybody's approved. We don't need any proof of anything. Even if you don't have a job, you're approved. Loan, mortgage, you got it. So they then packaged up all these ticking financial time bombs and sold them as mortgage-backed securities for a huge profit to various financial entities in countries around the world. A big enabler of this criminal activity was another branch of the banking system, the group of rating agencies, S&P, Fitch, and Moody's, who gave stellar ratings to all these destined to fail financial products and all those banks that pushed them. The club. Unscrupulous politicians such as Tony Blair joined Goldman Sachs and peddled these dangerous securities to pension funds and municipalities in countries around Europe. Banks and Wall Street gurus made hundreds of billions of dollars in this scheme. But this was just stage 1 of their enormous scam. There was much more profit to be made in the next 3 stages. Stage 2 is when the financial time bombs exploded. Commercial and investment banks around the world started collapsing in a matter of weeks. Governments at local and regional levels saw their investments and assets evaporate. Chaos everywhere. Vultures like Goldman Sachs and other big banks profited enormously in 3 ways. 1, they could buy other banks such as Lehman Brothers, who collapsed, and Washington Mutual, who also collapsed, for pennies on the dollar. Second, more heinously, Goldman Sachs and insiders such as John Paulson, who recently donated $400 million to Harvard, he says, had made bets that these securities would blow up. Paulson made billions, and the media celebrated his acumen. For analogy, imagine the terrorists betting on 9/11 and profiting from it. Third, to scrub salt on the wound, the big banks demanded a bailout from the very citizens whose lives the bankers had ruined. In the U.S., they got hundreds of billions of dollars from taxpayers and trillions from the Federal Reserve Bank, which is nothing but a front group for the bankers. In Greece, the domestic banks got more than $30 billion of bailout from the Greek people. Let that sink in for a moment. The supposedly irresponsible Greek government had to bail out the hardcore capitalist bankers. Stage 3. That is when the banks forced the government to accept massive debts. For a biology metaphor, consider a virus or a bacteria. All of them have unique characteristics to weaken the immune system of the host. One of the proven technologies used by the parasitic international bankers is to downgrade the bank's bonds of downgrade the bonds of a country through the rating agencies. So that's exactly what the bankers did, starting at the end of 2009. This immediately makes the interest rates or yields on the bonds go up, making it more and more expensive for the country to borrow money or even just roll over the existing bonds. From 2009 to mid-2010, the yields on 10-year Greek bonds almost tripled, if that's not the point he's trying to prove. This cruel financial assault brought the Greek government to its knees, and the banksters won their first debt deal of a whopping 110 billion euros. The banks who control the politics of nations, not who, the banks also control the politics of nations. In 2011, when the Greek Prime Minister refused to accept a second massive bailout, the banks forced him out of office and immediately replaced him with the Vice President of the European Central Bank. If that's not a telltale sign. No elections were needed on that one, by the way. Screw democracy. And what would this new guy do? Signed right on that dotted line on every piece of paperwork that the bankers brought in. By the way, the very next day, the exact same thing happened in Italy, where the Prime Minister resigned, only to be replaced by a banker/economist puppet. 10 days later, Spain had a premature election where a technocrat banker puppet won the election. The puppet masters had the best month ever in November 2011. A few months later in 2012, the exact bond market manipulation was used when the bankers turned up the Greece bond yields to 50%. This financial terrorism immediately had the desired effect. The Greek parliament agreed to a second massive bailout, even larger than the first one. Now here is another fact that most people don't understand. The loans are not just simple loans like you would get from a credit card or a bank. The loans come with very special strings attached that demand privatization of a country's assets. If you have seen The Godfather 3, you would remember Hyman Roth, the investor who was carving up Cuba amongst his friends. Replace Hyman Roth with Goldman Sachs or the IMF, which is the International Monetary Fund, or the European Central Bank, and you get the picture. Stage 4. Now the rape and humiliation of a nation begins. For the debt that was forced upon them, Greece had to sell many of its profitable assets to these oligarchs and international corporations. And privatizations are ruthless, involving everything and anything that is profitable. In Greece, privatization included water, electricity, post offices, airport services, national banks, telecom, port authorities, which is huge, by the way, in a country such as Greece, that is a world leader in shipping. In addition to that, the banker tyrants also get to dictate every single line item in the government's budget. Want to cut military spending? No. Want to raise tax on the oligarchs, big corporations? No. Such micromanagement is non-existent in any other creditor-debtor relationship. So what happens after privatization and despotism under banks or under bankers? Of course, the government's revenue goes down and the debt increases further. So how do you fix that? Of course, cut spending. Lay off public workers, cut minimum wage, cut pensions, same as our Social Security, if you will, cut public services, and raise taxes on things that would affect the 99%, but not the 1%. For example, pensions had been cut in half, and sales tax had increased to more than 20%. All these measures have resulted in Greece going through a financial calamity that is worse than the Great Depression of the U.S. in the 1930s. For Greece, yes, absolutely. Of course, the ever-manipulative bankers demand immediate privatization of all media, which means that the country now gets photogenic TV anchors who spew propaganda every day and tell the people that crooked and greedy banksters are actually saviors, and slavery under austerity is a much better solution than the alternative. Vote yes, Greece. Vote yes. Don't vote no. They voted no anyways, banksters. If every Greek person had known the truth about austerity, they wouldn't have fallen for this. Same goes for Spain, Italy, Portugal, Ireland, and other countries going through austerity. The sad aspect of this is that they are not unique strategies. Since World War II, these predatory practices have been used countless times by the IMF and the World Bank in Latin America, Asia, and Africa. Do you remember recently any talk, I know I did some videos, about Russia, China, India, the BRICS nations creating their own IMF/World Bank entity because they wanted something to compete against the IMF? That's the kind way, actually, of saying, we caught you, Westerners, Western oligarchs. We're not going to allow you to rape and pillage countries we're trying to do business with, including ourselves, any longer. So we're now going to have our own banking system. No, you're not exactly invited. And America has not been to any of those meetings. Any public photo ops, you will not see American people present whatsoever representing us. It is always the BRICS nations only. They are tired of having these things happen to them. And we as in the Western oligarchs, are not going to just let this happen. So yes, you can prepare for another quote-unquote 9/11 bigger than 9/11 attack so that we can try to maintain control in U.S. hegemony across the world. It is going to happen in one way or another. One way or other. It will. So this is the essence of the New World Order. A world owned by a handful of corporations and banks. Does that sound like a great one world government to you? So it's time for the wonderful people of Greece, and honestly other nations, to rise up like Zeus and say no to the greedy banker puppet masters, unpatriotic oligarchs, parasitic bankers, and corrupt politicians. Dear Greece, know that the world is praying for you. Vote no to austerity. Say yes to freedom, independence, self-government, and democracy. Yes, democracy, the word that was invented by you, the Greeks. P.S. You can also watch this video where John Perkins, author of Confessions of an Economic Hitman, which I've seen, talks about the exploitation of Latin American and Asian countries using the same tools of debt, austerity, privatization. He used to do this for a living. And that's him. I recognize him sitting down, and I've seen the video. So if you want to watch a first-hand account of how they do it, you watch that video. Confessions of an Economic Hitman. So this is what we're talking about. That's how they do it. And trust me, there's probably a whole lot of America privatization that these people want too. And they'll probably save us for last. Matter of fact, that's pretty much what Lindsey Williams said when he said it's going to happen to Europe first. The euro's going to go. You'll see that happen. And when that happens, you'll have mere weeks to get your stuff in order here in America if you haven't already, because it'll be coming here next. And from the looks of it, by God, he appears to be right. Take care.